Welcome back, everyone. Today we're gonna talk about Genesis 3, verse 6. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. This is the climatic moment of the spiritual fall, where internal distortion becomes action. According to the Zohar, this verse is a microcosm of the soul's descent, a shift from divine alignment to egoic autonomy, from receiving through divine flow to taking by self-will. Each phrase in this verse is loaded with esoteric meaning, illustrating the stages of internal seduction and external rupture. The first phrase we have, and the woman saw, the eye of desire. This seeing is no longer the holy, clear sight of the soul. It is the eye of duality, now seduced by the illusion of independence. She saw that the tree was good for food. This represents the descent into nephesh, the animal soul, the desire to consume, to gratify, to fulfill the body. In Kabbalah, before this, perception was transparent. The soul saw through the tree into the divine will. Now, the eye sees for the sake of the self, marking the beginning of egoic consciousness. The Zohar teaches that the serpent entered into her consciousness, implanting a false lens so that now she sees desire as truth. The next phrase we have, that it was pleasant to the eyes. Beauty detached from holiness. This is the aesthetic seduction, the allure of external beauty without inner connection to source. It is the descent into the klippah nogah, the translucent shell that glows yet conceals. The tree becomes pleasing, but pleasing to what? Not to the spirit, but to the externalized senses. This stage reflects the corruption of Tiferet, beauty severed from truth, used now to entice rather than to uplift. Where once beauty revealed the light of the infinite, now it tempts toward the illusion of self. The next phrase we have, and a tree desirable to make one wise. The corruption of da'at, which is knowledge. Here lies the final internal shift, the desire for wisdom without surrender. The Hebrew word for desirable is nechmat, echoes the language of coveting, a craving that overtakes discernment. In Zoharic Kabbalah, true da'at is union with the divine, knowing as cleaving. False da'at is knowing as control, to own knowledge, to gain superiority. Thus, Eve now desires wisdom as self-advancement, rather than as alignment with divine will. This is the deepest fall, not physical, but spiritual intention turned inward. Next, we have the phrase, she took and ate, the act of grasping. The verb took signals a critical mystical turning point. In Eden, Adam and Eve received from the flow of supernal light. Now, Eve takes a form of seizing, of spiritual theft, where one grasps divine energy out of order, without proper vessel or timing. Eating here symbolizes internalization. She draws the energy of the tree of knowledge onto herself, fusing dualistic perception into her soul. To eat is to become, the Zohar says. She ingested separation. Next we have, and gave also to her husband, the transmission of the fall. Adam did not speak with the serpent, yet he eats. This act is not just sharing, it is the spread of consciousness. In Kabbalah, Eve represents Malkuth, receives and transmits to Adam, which represents Zeir Anpin. Now, the contaminated light flows back into the upper structure, bringing the entire tree of life system into disorder. The phrase, and he ate, this represents the collapse of supernal alignment, the masculine pole meant to channel divine light, now receives from the fallen vessel. The entire system becomes inverted. The light of wisdom is replaced with knowledge divorced from holiness, and thus exile begins. The esoteric implication, the divine flow reversed. Before we have God, and then Adam, and then Eve, and then creation. But after we have serpent, and then Eve, to Adam, and then which leads to exile. This inversion of flow is the Kabbalistic model of sin, not just disobedience, but reversal of divine order. The Zohar teaches that this misalignment rippled through all worlds, fracturing the vessels and initiating the Sephirat HaKelim, shattering of vessels in the lower realms. To summarize, Genesis 3 verse 6, through the lens of the Zohar is the moment where distortion becomes action. Eve, who once lived in transparency with the divine, now sees with separated eyes. She sees the tree as good for food, which is bodily gratification, pleasant to the eyes, which is beauty without holiness, desirable for wisdom, which is self-elevation through knowledge. She takes instead of receiving. She eats, internalizing duality, and she gives to Adam, inverting the sacred flow. This is not just a bite of fruit, it is the consumption of illusion, the inversion of spiritual hierarchy, and the implantation of duality into human soul structure. The Zohar teaches the true sin was not disobedience, but spiritual misalignment. It was taking without timing, knowing without reverence, and desiring without surrender. And with that, Eden shattered, and the long path of repair, of returning to the tree of life, began. That's it for today. Thank you very much for your donation. Be blessed, everyone, and I will see you on the next episode.